Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the inaugural Speaker Series event for the Center for Business GIS and Spatial Analysis. My name is Ashish Sarkar. I'm a faculty member of Business and also the director of the Center for Business GIS and Spatial Analysis. The center, as several of you might be aware, was founded within the School of Business at the University of Redmond in the summer of 2011. And the center seeks to stimulate, support, and integrate GIS throughout the School of Business program and expand research and scholarship in GIS and spatial analysis among School of faculty members. Before I introduce today's speaker, I just want to take a couple of moments to introduce a distinguished member of the audience today. We have the pleasure of being joined by Dr. David Pike, who's right at the back, University Vice President.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm sitting here munching on my sandwich, so I won't speak. Great to be here.
I also want to take a couple more seconds to just recognize the contributions and behind-the-scenes work of two outstanding individuals. Vanessa Celius is seated right here, who is a specialist in the school, and our always trusted research assistant and MBA program student, Leonard Dominguez. I now have the pleasure of introducing our speaker for today, Dr. David Schrader, Director of Strategy and Marketing at Teradata Corporation. Dr. Schrader is one of the marketing directors for Teradata. He is responsible for marketing the Active Intelligence Initiative intended to help Teradata customers and prospects derive more value from their enterprise data warehouses. This includes frontline systems like call centers on the web, as well as industry-specific points of contact like banking, ATMs, and retail scanners. He is currently focused on collecting the best customer practices of AI and helping customers fast-track new uses of Teradata technology. David joined Teradata in 1991 and has held various positions in engineering and moved to marketing in 1998. Dr. Schrader holds a PhD degree in computer science from Purdue University, has published widely in the area of customer management and presents talks worldwide at Teradata industry events and also in universities for business professors and students. In the past 2 years, he has invented and produced episodes of business scenario investigations, short form BSI, which goes very well actually with CSI. The show that's very famous on TV. It shows how data forensic investigators solve business problems by analyzing tweets, social media, geospatial, and other types of data. He is also on board of the Teradata University Network, and like I said, gives talks regularly at schools and colleges across the country. It is my pleasure to introduce and present to you Dr. David Schrader.
Thank you for the introduction. I'm glad to be here, and I'll try to make this an entertaining hour-long talk. I will go fairly fast, but if I go too fast, you should feel free to interrupt with questions. So fasten your seatbelts, and then send lots of oxygen and masks will drop down and conceal me. Let's go ahead and get started. I'll see the abstract. I figured I'd open with a relatively new case study from one of our customers, Oklahoma Gas and Electric, here in the Midwest, as you know. And just like another customer, Southern California Edison, they started moving towards real-time interactions with the customers so that they can go green. All of you know about green initiatives, right? Well, for most electric companies, that means renewable sources. In their case, they have wind farms out in the middle of Oklahoma. But I want to talk about the other kind of green that is in your wallet. That's the biggest motivator of all for people. If you can give them some feedback in real time, it motivates them to change things like temperature settings during the summer when we have hot days here in Los Angeles. You can decrease the amount of power consumption, and that helps them with the need to build more and more power plants. So everybody in California especially is big on not in my backyard, right? I want more power, but don't you dare put a power plant anywhere near me. Even in Oklahoma, they have some of those areas. So they launched a smart grid initiative that includes the ability to capture in more real time the actual results of electrical consumption and then turn that around into some value-added products for their customers. I want to show you a couple of screenshots. The capabilities are there to provide continuous feedbacks, but for the people who really want real-time feedback on their mobile phone, they can do that at 5-minute fidelity for most of their standard customers. They do it at 15-minute granules. You can send people price signals over any of the devices that they're connected to. So the database can help drive real-time behavior. Here's an example of the kind of screenshot that you might get from Oklahoma Gas and Electric. They will predict what your bill is. Many people today, when you get your electrical bill, you can look back on the pattern of usage. You can look at that and say, gee, I'm using more power this year than before. But they're using predictive models to tell you what your end-of-month bill will be, which allows you then to take some action on the kind of data that they provide. All of this is running on top of one of our Teradata boxes, actually not even a very big one, but it has billions of records, and the information is what I call active. It's coming in real time. They can generate these reports and push them out. They also use the database to do back office insights on any of a variety of data sets, which are all interconnected. So here's an example of their integrated logical data model for the electric utility industry. At the heart is the metering data, but they also have data around rates, calls to the contact center, all the customer information, and the ability to overlay all of that information on maps. So the uses here, if you look at the food chain from power production all the way to consumption, the smart data can be helpful to them at all points in that continuum. So I gave you the example of the right side end of the line, customer and marketing management, or what they call meter to cash collections would be all part of that. But upstream, they want to be able to do things like load forecasting, and in cases of emergencies, they need to be able to do real-time activities to get power lines repaired. Some of the BI examples here would be who are the biggest consumers of electricity. So at any point in time, they can go back, take a look at who the top 10% are, maybe even down the road change rates where allowed by the government in order to modulate demand. It's just like our carpool lanes here that you get to pay for now, where they're going to charge differential rates at different times to try to smooth out the traffic. Same kind of thing for electrical consumption. They can use mapping technology to go down to individual household levels and pick out the customers who are the high consumers. They can overlay that with actual aerial map capability. We'll see more examples later. Big problem is meters break. So you need at any point in time to know who to send the repair people out and how to optimize their routing from Oklahoma City. If you have outages for any variety of reasons, Oklahoma is very big in the tornado belt, so being able even to overlay weather pattern information so that they know where they need to focus after storms. All of those kinds of insights of the raw data overlaid on geospatial data are the kinds of things that this customer is doing with their technology. Okay, so that was our little warm-up case study. I'm going to give you 15 more. But before I do that, I thought for many people, you probably don't know much about Teradata and what our strategy is, and how big is big data, and what are we doing on geospatial. So I will give you about 7 minutes of background to answer this question. We were actually founded in 1979. Phil Natchez is one of the founders who did a PhD thesis at Caltech. So this is a California-founded company. The idea back then was, could you gang up a lot of cheap microprocessors, Intel processors, taking large amounts of data by distributing the data across a lot of computing nodes that will all run in parallel. So we will hash the data onto these different nodes. Each node will have its own storage, its own computing capability. And that model turned out to be quite well. in terms of business. When I joined in 1991, we were about $100 million a year in revenue. Last year, we were $2.4 billion. We were acquired along the way by NCR and AT&T. So part of my job when I was on the engineering side was to be the liaison to Bell Laboratories. So I did a lot of work on non-traditional data types, which today would be called big data, things like voice processing and putting that into the data along with analytics for word spotting so they can pick out unhappy customers. Our engineering headquarters are in Rancho Bernardo, but we mostly focus on global 3,000 blue chip customers around the world. These are the ones that have large amounts of data that are always pushing boundaries. We do sell to lower end customers, but that's not really our focus. We compete against IBM and Oracle every day of the week. My job is helping to move the use of the database from the traditional back office BI corporate headquarters, people with a lot of reporting or modeling, to putting that data in the hands of the frontline people to increase their intelligence. Question, how many of you like your experience when you call a contact center for a big company? I've never gotten a hand raised there. Why do you hate that experience? You get handed off, you don't like the news chats that they're playing that day. At the bottom line, it's a data question. They do not have at their fingertips the ability to do what we call one and done. Right? The information could be at their fingertips. In fact, you could use BI tools to predict why are people calling the care center and rearrange the button pushes so that that sequence matches the probable reason for someone calling. So you can see if you bought our stock when we split back off from NCR at $25, you would be doing quite well today. So the company is in good shape. A little bit of a history lesson. Our first customer was Wells Fargo back in '83. We are very well known for Walmart being our biggest customer. That is no longer the case, but even back in 1992 when they passed 1 terabyte, a lot of people were amazed because there was a huge amount of data. In fact, people made fun of our name. Why would anyone want a terabyte of data? Well, it turns out by 2006, Walmart was loading 1 billion rows a day with only 1 hour latency. Today it's 15 minutes between a swipe in the store, that data going up to satellite, coming down in jets to Arkansas to do inventory replenishment reasons. Biggest customer right now is eBay. eBay is constantly doing A/B split experiments on the layout of every screen, so it's not just what are you clicking on, but what was the experimental design has to be captured, and so a large amount of the data comes in. So if you have 1,000 terabytes, that's a petabyte. Back in 2008, we announced we had 5 companies that had passed petabytes of data. And today, our biggest system, I think the current number is 43,000 terabytes at the fingers of people at eBay. So when we talk about big data, and this is the biggest example that we have today, it's probably the biggest in the world. That's what Teradata does. Now, if you ask what's driving large amounts of data, my quick answer would be it's the answer to the journalism questions. Right? You know the journalism questions? Who, what, and where, important here, and why. And to tell a good story, you need to have all of that information at your fingertips. So a big driver is web clicks. So every web click, maybe it's not a transaction. You would want to collect the transactional information about what did people in the market basket buy, but you would also want to collect the information about what did they put in the market basket and not buy, because that's a big clue for marketing. So I can split the world into customer data, and you can collect a lot of information. You could collect in telco all the phone calls, but you could also collect all of the switching and the routing and the connections behind the scenes. So when you start moving from transactions to interactions, or if you start collecting tweets that people make and start computing the influencer networks of who retweets, that's a very large amount. In the back office, being able to instrument everything, gathering process information, I don't care if you call it Six Sigma, lean manufacturing, all of the moving parts in your company are kicking out data also. All of them, from my perspective, deserve to be captured and stored in a database so that then you can modify your manufacturing processes. And I think sensors will be the next big driver. So think of your grandmother, think of taking grandma to the doctor's office. Today, the amount of data that they collect is relatively modest. However, when you strap a sensor device on the grandma and it's kicking out signals at 5-second intervals, matching her to her history or other people like her with her conditions, and you see a deviation, as one analyst said, then Teradata should wake up and have the ambulance on the way before grandma keels over. So when we talk about real time, that's what we're talking about. We sell a variety of systems depending on what people want. We've engineered for 92 petabytes. The next release will keep ahead of eBay on what we call the active intelligent data warehouse. For people that have large amounts of data, low amounts of compute, or a need for really fast computes but not that much data, we have the two extremes, so you can do in-memory processing, as well as larger bits and smaller mid-range systems. This is the Gartner Group report on how we stack up. I think this is now the 12th year in a row where Teradata is the leader both on the vision dimension, the x-axis, as well as ability to execute. There are a lot of people that can claim they can do a lot of things and have vision, but we have a lot of blue-chip customers, and that's what I'm most proud of. They're very happy with our technology. They do very interesting things, and they're willing to tell me their stories of what they've done with just a So to wrap up on this, what's driving us are these interactions, even more so than the number of transactions. And that leads to some opportunities like letting consumers access their own information. This is an area I'm working on right now. I won't have time in the talk to talk about it. But what if when you shop at bonds, you got access to all of the records too? What could you do if you had access to all of the records? Well, I put that together with the health sensors. You could get feedback on whether you're eating the right products, and then bonds could help you substitute recommendations. Or you could get the new Nike shoes with the sensors. They connect up your exercise program with your diet program, and you can make the doctor much happier when you go back for your checkup. And it's that kind of real-time feedback that actually motivates people to change behavior. Big data is the big thing right now. A lot of people are talking about big data. Traditionally, Teradata could always claim big data because we handle large amounts of data, but it's not the volume, it's really the velocity and the variety in the data types, including some non-regularly structured types like usually fit into a relational database. So you need to have extra algorithms to process them. Many of them end up being graph algorithms, and I'll show you a video of that in just a second. Final slide, to handle all of these trends, Teradata made 2 acquisitions last year. We bought a company in the Bay Area called Master Data, and they are the experts. They were the winners in the Gartner chart for big data, and they do it in parallel, just like traditional Teradata. So that was a good acquisition for us. And then we also, because probably 50–60% of the uses of Teradata are by marketing people, we bought the leader in the marketing Gartner Group project. They're called a Primo out of Indianapolis. Let's talk a little bit about geospatial. We do partner with Esri, but we also start pushing things into the database. This is the usual problem statement. A lot of companies, especially big companies, have data hoarders. Do any of you watch the television show Hoarders? It's like the right mental metaphor for a lot of companies. A lot of people have their copy of their data, but they are pretty nice. They don't share with the rest of the enterprise. So I'm sure you might find geospatial hoarders, you might find the data mining hoarders, you might have the application people in their own little corner, but not talking to any of the other application people. Our view of the world is life gets much simpler if you share. If you follow the kindergarten rules and you put the information in a common place, you clean it up so that everybody gets clean data. And now you don't have to spend as much time moving data around. In fact, we encourage you to move the algorithms inside the data warehouse into these powerful computing nodes. So instead of doing this picture, which is a big advantage, you get out to the shared copy of data, we recommend that you push your algorithms inside of the data, and that will give you orders of magnitude improvement in runtime. So we work with a lot of vendors like SAS to push the statistical algorithms inside the database and parallelize them. For people who are analytics oriented, there are different categories. You can see here I highlighted the geospatial category. I'm not going to spend time on this. You can get a copy of the slides and take a look at it. But the bottom line is we sell hardware, software, professional services to help you if you need help with analyzing the data. Within the geospatial area, there's a SQL standard that we follow very closely that have, over the past 10 years, geospatial extensions for things like points, lines, polygons. So we would work with other companies to geocode the address information, for example, and then there are a variety of functions within the database that can run in parallel so that you can do things. I'll give you examples like compute the distance from the store to the top customers. In this case, I think it's an example from San Diego. Someone wanted to find the top 100 customers by value within the store area. They were thinking about doing home delivery for grocery stores, so they wanted to see the relative location of the people. They also wanted to see where the competitors were so that they could do a test mail campaign. If you scale up, one of the largest phone companies in the world did this experiment where they have 30 million customers and they wanted to do some promotions that they needed to drive people to the local store, and they were aiming at people that had not come into their local store. So they wanted, I think, with the iPhones coming out to drive people to come in and try them out. So the old way on the left here to calculate the distance between each store and a customer, and they were giving them the option of the three closest stores, took 65 billion calculations. When they moved the processing inside of the database, the results came back 25 times faster because you aren't copying and moving data to these top-ordered systems. So here you can see a typical environment would be data flowing into the data warehouse. You may have a pocket of people on what we call a data lab. We can carve out a portion of the data warehouse as a sandbox area for experiments. We also partner with any variety of companies so they can do things like the geocoding that I talked about. So big data is a big driver. This visual happens to be a telco slide. What's happening there, we traditionally capture the phone call records, but what we can do on those is see who your calling network is. So who is calling who, and then we can take a look at purchases. So if you switch to a new service offer, how many people in your calling group then switched after you? And we can start picking up who are the influencers, or if you bought the latest phone upgrade offer, how long did it take, and how many people in your group bought also. I'll give you a video on that in just a second. But of course, the phone companies with the bundles are also providing internet service so they can capture search keywords. While they legally cannot listen to your phone call, it is fair game for them to see what your browsing behaviors are. And what they want to do is parlay that into value-added services to people like retailers. Certainly with mobile phones, knowing your location provides another potential service offer. And I have an example of that in just a second. Okay, so that's the end of the overview of what is big data and what does Teradata do. And does anybody have any questions there? Someone asks you tomorrow, what does Teradata do? All you will tell them and large amounts of data, right? We run analytics in parallel to get insights that people can use the action. Can we back that up? So in the introduction, he said that I got bored doing PowerPoints because I do a lot of PowerPoints. So I thought to myself, what's a good way of visually showing people what you can do? How many of you watch TV and watch CSI? It's a perfect model. What's the Hollywood scripting of every episode? It begins, the opening scene would be
Somebody died.
a dead body. Right? I can't do dead bodies. I can give you dying companies. Right? And then what's the next scene? What happens?
Try to figure out what's going on.
Not yet. They don't try to figure out what's going on yet. They have to go out and collect Evidence, clues, data. Okay, that's exactly the equivalent of the data just bringing in. Okay, then you run the analytics. They don't show you the analytic results, but I can do that. I will show you some Tableau and other partner reports on the visuals that you might get, and then you can see how they solve the case. Okay, so we're going to show the video. You need to back it up. Yeah. Okay, turn the speakers up.
Intergalactic Telephone Corporation has a problem. 3 months ago, they launched a new line of smartphones, but things haven't gone as planned. Let's listen in on some unhappy customers.
Well, Nancy, I took your advice to buy a new smartphone, but when I call my sister, I get static. Then the call drops.
Really? I'm not having any problems.
Yeah, well, you don't live where I live. It's bad. I've called customer support 5 times. My sister and I never have a day without a drop call. We should go back to our old home.
Oh, sorry, I had to take this. Hi, Mom. Yeah, good. Just waiting for the kids. Dinner tomorrow? Hello? Oh, darn it, drop me again.
See, you're having problems too. We should cancel our contracts.
At Intergalactic, the VP of Customer Insights, John Wolf, can see the new smartphone rollout is in trouble. He's called a meeting with his in-house expert, Willie, and 2 investigators from BSI Teradata.
Since the new rollout, we've had major problems with drop calls in our Northeast region and a big uptick in complaint calls to our care center.
In just the past 4 days, we've lost 60,000 customers. All complaints about bad service. We're going to miss our revenue and profit plan.
We're the worst region in the East. We have to fix this. Willie, you lead the project, but I want fresh ideas from BSI Teradata. That's why I invited Jake and Zoe in.
Jake, I've heard you're the new scientist on deep customer insights. Zoe, we've worked with you before.
Glad to be back. So, just how bad are your problems? What's causing this?
There are lots of reasons. Some handset defects, holes in tower coverage, software glitches. That's why we need to analyze the data.
Wow, can we get access to the detailed data? I don't mean summary call detailed records. I mean the raw data about switches, handoffs, and geography, so we can find out what's causing the drops. And cross-correlate that with customers, profit, maybe figure out effective routes, and...
Hold on, Jake, we need a plan. Here's what I want to do. John, you work with Jake to find what's driving defectors. I'll work with Zoe to find the best offers to appease customers. Then we'll regroup to create some marketing and operations campaigns to fix this.
Makes sense to me.
The team regroups to go over insights and create a game plan to save ITC.
So what did you guys find?
This is a big data problem, so Jake used our new Teradata Astra system to dig into the details. We started with ops data and mapped that to customers so we know who calls whom. Then we created a connection graph. Here's a sample for 3,000 people in Boston. Nodes represent subscribers and websites, and links between nodes are mobile call connections. I'll zoom into a few customers so you can see the detail. We then weight the links by number of dropped calls. In red, you can see customer pairs impacted by dropped calls. Then we added customer lifetime value scores. Bigger nodes indicate more profitable customers.
Wow, that's impressive.
Yeah, but we aren't done. This is where our whiz kid Jake really kicked in.
Ha! Zoe saw a sneak preview of this. Key idea is to focus on customers who are early tech adopters, people who help their friends decide when to upgrade to a new phone or service. They might not be your highest value customers, but they wield a lot of power, and if they're not happy, they churn and take others with them. Now, I used Astra to find top influencers and coded those guys blue. See? They're just as important as your high-value customers. But that was just a sample. For your Northeast region, I blasted through 7 billion call records and found 1 million clusters of people who call each other. Then I computed the influencers in categories like first purchases, service upgrades, and complaints. We found 120,000 watch list bad service clusters that are at risk. And within those, there are 40,000 key influencers we need to monitor.
Within that group, 4,000 already canceled phone service and took 18,000 other customers with them. That's 28 million in lost revenue.
Ouch, so that's your watch list. I can give you a file of all the phone numbers.
We also did some work for the network planning group. Customer call location is important too, so we mapped high-value customers and their influencers to see what locations are causing problems.
Which we could fix with towers.
Exactly. We built a game plan for quickly installing the fewest towers to cover the most high-value, unhappy customers and influencers.
Excellent. Okay, that watch list and the new tower list is exactly what we need. So now, Zoe, show them our new turnaround approaches to save customers.
We built 5 event-based campaigns using our Primo marketing tool. We want to watch for drop calls and react in real time. How we react to each customer depends on their type of service and phone, revenue, lifetime value, and whether they're on or off contract. We'll also take influencers into account. First, for most people, a simple apology might help. That way, people know we're on top of the problem. We can apologize via SMS, via letters in the mail, or outbound calls. For higher value customers with multiple drop calls, our next response will be credits on their bills.
We can also create dead zone maps for our call center agents so they can see exactly where callers dropped calls occurred. That makes customer service calls more personal.
And for people with old phones, we'll send out free software upgrades. Finally, we can offer some people free Femto cell boosters as a short-term fix if they're not covered by the new towers and call from fixed locations like home or office.
We already created a Primo campaign dialogues for all of these.
We'll also use a Primo to set up a campaign budget so we can monitor costs. Apologies are almost free, but Femto cells cost about $200 each. We don't want to run out of cells and cause even more problems.
Great. Willie, how do we set up and run these campaigns?
There are 3 parts. First, we'll stream the drop call data from ops into the Teradata database. We'll use a new feature called multi-temperature hybrid storage. Drop calls flow into the top level for analysis, which uses really fast access solid-state drives. Second, we'll do real-time drop call matches against the watch list of at-risk customers. Third, when we find a match, we'll run analytics and kick off the most appropriate Primo marketing campaign for each customer.
When can we start?
Right away. Give us your watch list, and I'll get our DBAs and the Primo experts to kick it all off tomorrow.
4 weeks later, the team shows results to Jody Swinko, the head of BSI.
So what do you have?
Great results. In the past 2 weeks, we saw 4 million dropped calls impacting 1 million customers. 80% of those customers got our apologies, and some got discounts, software upgrades, and booster cells to buy us some time to build more towers.
Complaint calls are way down. The care center even got 200 positive calls from amazed customers, and customer sat numbers are turning around.
Good job, team. Is the system performing as expected?
Yes, the new Teradata hybrid storage is working great. Jake set up daily updates from Aster to keep the watch list up to date. Response time is amazing.
Jody's, we're really happy with these results. I'm sure the turnaround will show up in our quarterly results, and our VP will be amazed. Willie, nice job. Jake, great work. And Zoe, anytime you get tired of BSI and need a job.
No way. Don't you dare steal my Zoe.
Thanks for watching another BSI episode. You'll find all our episodes on our website, as well as how we did it PowerPoints that explain how technologies from Teradata Aster, Primo, and Teradata, plus our partner Tableau, made this episode possible. You can also contact us if your company needs custom help from Teradata.
And R2. So did you like that? It's pretty compressed, but these are available on YouTube along with several other episodes. I'm working right now, literally, on episode 10. So there are a good set of examples across all different industries, what you can do with more real-time data, what you can do with more advanced analytics. Okay. Any questions there? Make sense? So what I want to do in the remaining time is give you a bunch of customer examples. I travel a lot worldwide. I talk to a lot of people about what they're doing, and I've captured some of their stories. I'm going to catalog them into the 3 areas that I usually talk about when I give active talks. The idea is real-time information can be helpful to analyze the state of your business. I call that active dashboarding or active corporate performance management. Customer management and operations are the other 2 areas. So in the active dashboard area, I'll give you 3 examples. The first one, it's a very common one, and I'm sure you've seen it too, there are more and more people that are mobile. And if you have a mobile salesperson, he probably has a daily call list of who he's going to go see, but maybe there's cancellations, and he might have a 2-hour delay. He would like to pull up on the mobile phone what other accounts or prospects are geographically within this area so that I could go talk to them. And you want to be able to use the same mobile phone to get better for meetings. The whole idea is that the information you get is available to the frontline people so that they can make better operational decisions day to day. So dashboards, you can drill into anything. There were surveys last year that Howard Dresner did that said those BI queries from a mobile phone are actually the third most popular application on mobile phones behind email and calendar. So people in the business world do want access to information, and we should make it geospatially relevant. My second example comes from the US Air Force. Actually, Air Force, Navy, and Army are all doing the very same kind of stuff. But Air Force is an interesting example. Apparently, 2 or 3 years ago, some generals got called up from the Pentagon to the investigation rooms at the Congress because they lost some things like nuclear bombs. Not knowing where your assets are can be a problem. So that gave rise immediately to a Teradata-based project, a dashboard project to do global combat support. They have feeds of all of the things that they have assets on. The story focuses mostly on spare parts. So if you have a plane that needs to go on a mission and it's breaking down, you need spare parts. And they are in your local depot, you need to know how quickly you can get the plane back up and running. So it tracks everything. A lot of it is based on RFID tags. Although they have the full power of the US government, they did not apparently use the cartography services. They did simple mashups on Google to show things that are in motion. And of course, if things are in motion like you would expect, they're color-coded one way, and if they've been diverted for any reason, you might want to know that. So here you can see something that was supposed to be going, looks like to Dallas, it got diverted to the middle part of the United States. When I presented this was the first time for one of our user groups, do you know what question I got on this slide? Why is LA bombing Boston? Third example on the dashboarding side is Sabre. Sabre is behind a lot of your airline reservations. They're in Dallas. They collect all of the detail, including the real-time data on operations, so flights during the day. And they're parlaying that or monetizing that into some value-added services for the second and third tier airlines. So the big boys, America and United, have plenty of their own IT people, so can do this on their own. But for second and third tier groups that don't have as many IT people, they're creating new value-added services. It turns out the biggest event for which dashboarding makes a lot of sense, all the way from the executives down to the baggage handlers, would be monitoring and improving the on-time performance. And to do that, we need to accelerate turnaround times. That's how Southwest Airlines beats everybody else. They have a 24-minute turnaround, everybody else has 39 minutes. Well, that doesn't happen just by random. Everybody knows if 2 flights come into LA at the same time, which one is the more critical one to get back on schedule. Similarly, they use geospatial overlays to show within the routing network, everybody can see which are the problematic flights, especially the ones that do not kick off first of the day. So having information throughout the enterprise on dashboards, color-coded, so that they can see the patterns, is how people beat their competition in the airline industry. Okay, get the idea of dashboards? Let's drill now into customer management, which could be marketing, sales, service, and I'm going to give you several examples. I got to give a talk at the Science Museum in London, and I was on the agenda right after our customer, who at the time was called Norwich Union, now they're called Aviva. And they were the first company to start instrumenting cars and kicking out signals for insurance purposes. Now, if you think about most insurance companies, they do risk ratings on very broad categories, like if you have kids that are 18 to 20, they probably pay a premium. Why? Because they have accidents, right? Now, how many of you have an 18 to 20-year-old? Your child is much better than the average, right? So should you pay the average amount for your son's insurance? No, you should pay according to how he drives. And if you gather the detailed data and load it into the database, you can now kind of charge by the mile. So they built a database that had every intersection in their coverage area. They did the risk rating by time of day, and then using the GPS sensor information, they would rate every segment from every intersection to the next intersection, add it all up. Now, from a business perspective, why was this a smart thing to do? Well, think about the behavior. If I charge you a high price when you have a new driver and could be paying a low price, they're going to switch to this insurance company? Yes. And if you have this kind of intelligence behind yourself and your kid is hell on wheels, and all of a sudden you're paying much higher than the average amount, are you going to switch to someone who doesn't have the smarts to charge you the most appropriate amount? Absolutely. So this is a good way to do competitive warfare based on the information and drop the high-risk insurance to competition where they will turn into losses. We had a talk with Hannah from Norfolk Southern at one of the conferences. In his case, it's a B2B, business-to-business example. So they put sensors on the locomotives, and they took some cost out of the system, because if you're a manufacturer waiting for your boxcar supplies for your manufacturer, what's your number one question? When is it going to arrive? Right? So do you really need to have a call center to answer those questions? No, people can self-serve on the web. And it gets more complicated because in many cases those boxcars are being translated onto trucks, and now the trucking company needs to answer that query, so you have a flow of information from the trucking company back into Norfolk Southern information. So with 15-minute fidelity, the Access NS website can answer the question. They reduce the number of calls by about 35%. In the credit card area, there are 2 or 3 customers. This one is a USA one. I actually found a really nice one from Lloyds Bank over in the UK. But similar kinds of things. In this case, they knew that they had card numbers for merchants that were being impacted by a tornado going through. And so what they decided to do was waive fees, because they knew that these people were in trouble and they needed help. In the case of Lloyds, do you remember when the Iceland volcano went off? And a lot of people got stranded. So over the weekend, Lloyds came in, their IT people took a look at who paid for a ticket with a credit card during these dates when they knew that they were probably overseas, and then they send out messages to them saying, we will waive any late payments, and by the way, we increased your credit limit because we know that you're stranded. What does that do to loyalty when you have that kind of insight? It goes up dramatically. So that's what you can do with some of these technologies. The holy grail for telcos is translating mobile location information into value-added services. Now, the privacy people will probably get all excited about this as it becomes well-known, and politically I'm libertarian, so I do pay attention to all of that kind of stuff. But in this case, some of the smaller customers that we have, like Telefonica Czech, are actually way ahead of some of the bigger customers. In their case, they were doing that kind of social networking analytics to figure out who are their most valuable customers. We probably are knowledgeable about 80-20 rules, you know, that 20% of your customers give you 80% of the revenue. Well, Telefonica Czech applied that to influencers, and they thought, before they looked at the data carefully, that 10% of their customers were influencing 35% of overall revenue. After they looked at the data, they found that 10% of them were actually influencing 80%. So is that a valuable piece of information to have if you're the marketing group? Absolutely. The other thing that they did, because they have their own stores in the Czech Republic, was they watched mobile location, and where they had permission, they would drive offers that you could satisfy by going into the local store. They only sent those offers out when you were in proximity. It drove foot traffic in their stores up by 30%. So that kind of geospatial capability can be a competitive weapon too. How many of you have heard about ShopKick? One or two. It's actually a network of people at the malls that put together their heads and came up with a system to drive more mall and store traffic. The idea, if you're taking notes, is turn a physical store into a website. Turn a physical store into a website. So what happens is, when you walk into the mall and they detect that you're there, up will come, congratulations, you just got 25 kickback points, loyalty points, which are interchangeable across the merchants that are part of this. When you go through the door, it just says, welcome back to Target or Sports Authority, you just got 50 kickback points. And then when you're in the store, the products have laser reader QR codes, and so if you watch a little video on your mobile phone about a particular product, it might give you 100. Now, they aren't doing this with GPS. They're actually doing it with audio. So there are speakers that emit inaudible to human being signals when you walk through, and the app uses the microphone on your mobile phone to know that you're picking up those signals. Apparently, the first few tests didn't go well. Seeing eye dogs went somewhat crazy, but they got that worked out of the system. Now, does it work? They decided to do a test. How many of you know what Black Friday is? It's the day after Thanksgiving, and then there's Black Monday. That's where everybody does their Christmas shopping from work, right? Okay. So Sports Authority thought, can we like double or triple the points if you will come into our stores on those days instead of shopping online? Because people who come into the stores tend to buy more impulse buying. And this was a write-up, I think, in Wall Street Journal online back in 2011. They got 50 to 70% more foot traffic by driving people with those extra points. So you see the idea. Some polls came out last year on do people want to use GeoSmart apps, and you can see the growth from the year 2008 to 2011. And if you wanted to track the growth of it, I would track the money. And again, here people, for privacy reasons, are going to have heartburn, but a lot of these things are driven by advertising. And so if you take a look at the numbers for mobile advertising, that will be probably this area is likely to grow. Final area here is, most people when they think geospatial think geography, but I think there are virtual spaces like the layout of web activities and web journeys that can be analyzed also, and that's going to be the subject of the next VSI episode called The Case of the Retail Turnaround. When we bought Aster, there are a couple of things that they're known for. One is called Golden Path Analytics. So if you looked at the website and the sequence of pages, what are the journeys that terminate in a purchase or don't? And being able to analyze those things using graphics like this. So here's a store that offers all the products on the left, and you can pick a line, and that would be one person's journey through the system, putting things in their market basket, culminating over here with purchasing the product. And you can start seeing graphically where are people going on the website. Now, what's interesting to me is the bailout analysis for people who X out of a session. Did they maybe bail out on the shipping page? And you can see maybe categories of customers that are sensitive to that. You want to take action if they're high value by waiting the shipping charge. Or what are the people that get through it, but they find that you're going to have to split the order because you don't have the inventory in stock, and are there any clues there? And one thing that we heard from our customer Cabela's was if you can pick out the first in basket product on the website and make sure that that's always in stock, because if it splits the shipment, you get a much higher bailout number if that first item, which is probably the reason why we were shopping, did not make it into the first shipment. So those are some of the insights that you can get on big data. Let me finish up with the operations area where having data, geospatial information at your fingertips helps. In many cases, insurance companies are big users here, so they want to do risk ratings. Remember the fires down in San Diego? So people were doing ratings of shake roofs versus tile roofs. I used to live in Colorado Springs and had 50 employees there, and one of them was fortunate in the wildfires. I saw the aerial view from the Denver Post, and I overloaded that with the Google Apps to find that out of the 15 destroyed houses and 2 left standing, hers was one of the 2 left standing. When I called her, it was completely because of tile roofs. What many people are doing in the hurricane cases here, you can see Florida, is doing predictive modeling of given past hurricanes, where do they think it's going to hit, and where will the storm surges from the rivers cause flooding, and then they will pre-notify people and remind them about their insurance coverage, as well as pre-position agents to help people after they have damage. Again, what does that do to loyalty? If you just had a disaster with your house and the agent is there the next morning writing you a check, do you switch insurance companies? Probably not. So being able to do these kind of things inside the database, in this case, I forget if it was Liberty Mutual or Nationwide, but being able to push the information down inside of the database. It took some of these reports from 2 days to pull it all together in 5 minutes. And that's a very typical kind of thing. So now you can execute the flow of thought when the technology is not in web. FedEx, I got to go to their corporate research headquarters a year and a half ago. For high-value products, they were going to put these, or are now putting these sensor-aware devices in. They're kind of cool. They have reporting capability on their location. So if you think of any like high-value art object in transit between museums, it can tell you at all points in time where it is. It has a light meter, so if the package before delivery is exposed to light, as their CIO said, that's never a good thing. It could have been stolen, packaging could have been destroyed. They have accelerometers, think of them like jiggleometers. They know the pattern of motion of being in a truck compared to being hand carried, so they know everything about the delivery of that particular package. Continental Airlines went from worst to first using Teradata. What they do is pretty amazing across the board, but the case that I like the most is if they have congestion problems, so a big snowstorm in Chicago, they will use the analytics to take a look at the gate assignments, and they will switch gates if they can minimize the walk time between connections for the most number of their high-value customers. They will switch gates to minimize the walk time for the most number of their high-value customers. I think they're the only people that are doing that kind of thing, but they take into account the layout of the airport, and as a consequence, they get very high loyalty from the high-value customers. BNSF did some experiments. They wanted to go green, so they calculate what they call the velocity of their overall system. It's really no different from the airline examples. They need to get constrained resources through a constrained network when there are all kinds of perturbations because of weather problems and equipment issues. So turnaround time for equipment is a good operational use of Teradata. They want to track every piece of equipment, just like the U.S. airports did. In their case, they instrumented and also gathered fuel gauge information. It turns out locomotive engineers are no different from you and me. Some of them like to gun it sometimes, so they actually provide real-time feedback to the engineers that are going up a hill and coming down a hill and their behavior, and they give them some rewards so that they can save fuel. And while you might not think that's a big deal, it was about 1% of their overall revenues 1 year just by modulating how people drove the locomotive. So they give access to 8,000 people real-time information. I don't have this one written up, but I got to hear a talk at one of our user groups by John Goodstein from Cardinal Health. They're #1 on the Fortune 21. He does simulations of their warehouses from an operations research perspective. So there are carts, and the people have to go picking and packing into bins, medical supplies, pharmaceuticals, drugs, and how they route them around a big warehouse, because each bin is destined for a different company, and minimizing the amount of time. So they strap on a wristband, and it tells you the pick and pack ordering, but then they start watching and see if we put these things that are frequently used in the middle instead of where they have to bend down, or how much reaching are they doing. We can change the ordering of the bins on the pick and pack procedure and take something like 30% of the cost and time out of the equation by using that kind of event-based simulation. I think my final example of it is from Volvo. So Volvo has started instrumenting their systems, gathering the data on how people drive when they bring their cars in. So this is not real time, but it's when people bring their cars in for service. They know the geography, they know how people were driving. So they get about 150 kilobytes, which is a huge car per year, and at the service days, they're uploading information from 12 to 15,000 cars per day. But for new model rollouts, they can get a lot of early information that can become quite useful. Or for older cars, they can match that against warranty claims and see which kind of cars need to be brought in for proactive servicing. In many cases, they can go back to engineering and tell them problematic areas faster than they could before, so that they don't produce more cars that just have the same kind of information. So every car comes in, gets instrumented, it goes to the Volvo data warehouse, and then they can use the integrated analytics to run the business. Everything from dashboards to real-time feedback. back to the manufacturing lots. Okay, so wrapping up, you can get a variety of information from the Teradata website. If you're a developer, we have an open area, and you can download Teradata as a sample system. So if you're an IT person and interested in that, you make some of the geospatial capabilities downloadable and you can read much more about some of these examples. If you liked my BSI episode, by the way, this is a $0 production, so all the talent there are my co-workers. It only cost me a few dollars to buy the white lab jackets and take still photos of them, get an agency to put it together. They're all out on YouTube, or they're accessible through the Teradata University network. The latest episodes are around StagnoBank, so if you like those complicated Tableau visuals, I give you examples of people who end up canceling their service at a big bank. I called it StagnoBank. Actually, when I was at Royal Bank of Scotland, they stopped the episode and said, "Is that us?" Which meant that we knew the spot on some of the problems. But a good example there would be, if someone cancels because the bank charged them fees, which was a big deal here last year in California, you could actually stitch together all of the interactions. And you could go back in time in those journeys from cancellation as the end event to the fact that, oh, they talked to the teller about fees. Before that, they were on the website, because before that, they got their monthly statement of fee. And you could have headed off that cancellation much earlier in time if you had the data. So StagnoBank parts 1, 2, and 3 show off some of this capability. This is one of our interns from 2 years ago. This is a talent for this one, which part 3 has some geospatial applications in it. So these are becoming more and more popular, because in 5 to 7 minutes, they'll paint a picture of what you could be doing with best practices in data warehousing. So my final thoughts are that we're really in the golden age of analytics. It's pretty amazing. People who are studying and developing the skill sets, everything from statistics to database IT technology, are commanding starting salaries of $80,000, $90,000 a year. Big data is the hot topic right now. I think the area of geospatial is important, but not in isolation. I go back to the journalism questions. You need to stitch it together with what, when, and why in order to really get the insights so that you can drive them within the right geo-context to the right business decisions. And at the end of the day, that's what all this technology is about. And with that, we'll conclude right on time at 1 o'clock, so we've got 10 minutes saved for questions. Any questions for me? Did I go too fast?
Yeah. I sometimes feel like, Northern Ireland. I have a problem for every solution, So, but the first thing that I'll be really interested in is, do you have any idea what the return on the investment is for companies to move, and what's like the size required so it really makes sense to go for systems? So it's hugely powerful with the types of systems that you offer.
So the question is, how do you compute the ROI? Maybe more to the point, how do you figure out how to get started? So usually what we will do with customers is do a workshop, and we'll gather all the people that could be benefiting from technology, whatever it is, geospatial. Usually, if I'm running the workshop, I would take that kind of three-dimensional layout of, is it going to be more helpful for you to have dashboards that show geography, and what would you do? That's the operative way. What would you do if you had, and then we lay out the capability. In the case of geospatial, I would say most people are doing it at the customer management level, so they want to geocode the address that's in the database, and then they want to use that to do things that are kind of offline, slow-moving, like site selection, where do I put in a new store if you're Starbucks, or the killer one for Southwest Airlines would be something like, what new city routes do I want to go into? And being able to see those on geography, maybe annotated with the value of adding a route here compared to adding a route there. My main focus has been on the operational level. So for example, when I talk to the Southwest people, and I don't have the data on ROI, but everybody knows, like you said, Southwest needs to turn the planes around faster. Now, if you were to catalog every step of what it takes to turn around the flight, one of them is the wheelchair people. And they're going to wheelchair people off of Teradata. So they know exactly how many people are coming in, distribution in the airport of wheelchairs, if you use geospatial to do that capability, maybe show people on a mobile phone where they need to go next. And you can start valuing that. And granted, each one of those is very small, but when you multiply it by the number of events per day, you can come up with an ROI calculation. So usually what I do in the meetings is lay out a bit of a bingo board, and then we have the people in the meeting mark which are the stories that I tell, because those are just examples of what other people have done. So we lower the risk. You're not the first one to do these things. And then we rank and rate them, and then usually that folds into some kind of proof of concept of the business justification. So that would be the flow. I will tell you, most customers are not going to hand you, here was the ROI for my project. That's all internal information. Okay, other question? Yes?
Well, my question is not specifically about the Teradata. It's more about one of the cases that you shown was Continental Airline, that they were able to actually switch gates just to, you know, give more convenience for their most highly valuable customers.
Right.
How could they have that done if say every airline want to do that? How could the control tower accommodate such kind of requests?
Okay, well, the question is around Continental and moving the gates. They have to buy or rent the gates, so it's their gates. You
Oh,
treat
just,
the gates
oh,
as an
okay,
asset.
switching between
The control tower has nothing to do with the gate themselves.
Oh, okay.
So it's a good example on the operations side of maximizing your assets. You treat gate time as one more asset as part of the alarm there, so we're trying to model.
Okay, so the operation.
Continental actually is well documented. Kelly Cook was their chief marketing officer, and she was the inventor of From Worst to First. It's interesting, she's now the chief marketing officer at DSW Shoes. So if any of you are happy with her programs for marketing shoes to you, you can see a video of her and a write-up about her in the Teradata magazine on the Teradata website. Kelly Cook, but you can also Google Kelly Cook Continental, and a lot of the stories about all the good things that Continental did by having data at the fingertips of everybody are all written up and available. Another question? Yep.
Well, my name is Glenn Henderson. I'm with ESRI. I noticed our work on some of your slides where we have worked with Teradata in the past. And obviously, we have many geospatial applications. Are any of those customers willing to talk about their user stories in the marketing sense?
Oh, I'm sure they are. I haven't talked to the ESRI marketing people, but to get ready for this, I talked to our person who works with them. Many of these are joint stories. I didn't have time to highlight them. If I had a little more time to prepare for the talk, I would probably go back and annotate them, because I know I'm sitting here in the middle of ESRI country.
I think they're great stories, and I'd like to see us get them out there. A lot of times, it's the users' willingness to do that.
Yep.
And of course, the third data.
Okay. Okay. So I have an offer for you. If you can hook me up to the right ESRI people and run through the lawyers or whatever the impediments are to telling a story, I can put ESRI and they'll come in ESRI opposite.
Okay, I can help you with that.
Okay.
And one specific question, I'm wondering, you're talking about thousands of terabytes of data, and I'm wondering, can you give us a sense of how much of it is geographic reference? Is it all of it? Is it 50%?
The amount of data in the database?
Yeah, I mean, that has geographic component.
So the question is, what percent of the value of the information comes from geography?
Yes. Yeah.
I don't really know the answer to that question because I haven't thought about it very much. I go back to my opening and closing comment around context. It's really hard to pick like one piece of the technology stack. Like geospatial and then attribute value to the decomposed piece. It's really going to be all parts working together. Going back to my journalism comment, if someone's writing a story, they wouldn't write a story just about the geography. It has to be who, when, and their lives. So it kind of fits in the context. I don't know that a lot of the value of only the geospatial part. Probably easier to point to, if a company did 100 applications, what percent of them had geospatial components? And you probably have asked some big customers that don't have the information about resources.
Okay. Are there any other questions from the audience? Well, thank you very much, Dave. Giving us other outcomes from the school and reporting it to the center, we have a little appreciation. Just give me on your phone, or if you're having a really bad day, you can use it as well. Thank you again to all of you for coming and attending today. We have some green flyers back there that are pointers to upcoming events that the center is going to sponsor. We have 2 tentative events scheduled at this point, one on November 7th and the other is on December 5th. We have our upcoming speakers from ESRI, of course, since we are in the middle of ESRI land. And our December speaker is a professor of economics from CSU Pomona. Thank you again, and I hope that you have a wonderful rest.